The night he changed forever did not arrive with thunder or fire. It arrived quietly, wrapped in a phone call that shattered her hands so badly she dropped the phone on the kitchen floor and stared at it as if it were a living thing that had just bitten her. In that moment, her life split into two versions of itself, the one where love felt safe and predictable, and the one where love became a daily act of courage. She did not know then that the man she loved would become a stranger shaped by rage, silence, and scars. She only knew that something precious was slipping away, and no one ever tells you how heavy love feels when it refuses to let go. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of love that refuses to abandon broken people, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. She had met him long before the darkness found him, back when his laugh came easily and his eyes carried plans instead of warnings. He was the kind of man who fixed broken chairs instead of throwing them away, who remembered small details like the way she took her tea or how she hated sudden loud noises. Their love was not loud or dramatic. It was built from shared mornings, sheep dinners, and dreams whispered into the soft spaces between breaths. When he spoke about the future, his voice was steady, and when he held her hand, it felt like a promise rather than a grip. That was the man she loved, and that was the man she kept searching for long after he disappeared. The accident, the incident, the moment everyone referred to in hushed tones, tore something open inside him that never fully closed again. It left behind a body that healed faster than his mind, and a heart that learned anger before it remembered tenderness. He returned home different, carrying his pain like a weapon even when he did not mean to. His silences grew long and sharp, cutting through rooms like broken glass. His temper flared at shadows, at memories, at the smallest inconveniences. She watched him change the way one watches a storm approach from far away, hoping it might turn, praying it would pass without destruction. Loving him became work, not the joyful kind, but the exhausting kind that left her breathless at the end of each day. She learned how to read the tension in his shoulders, the warning signs in his eyes, the moments when she should speak and the moments when silence was safer. She learned to make herself smaller, quieter, easier, not because she believed she deserved less, but because she believed he deserved more patience than the world was willing to give. Friends drifted away, unsure how to help her, too afraid to stay close. Family worried and careful, restrained ways, and she stood in the middle of it all, holding on to love like a fragile, flickering light. The beast he became was not born from cruelty but from wounds that never stopped bleeding. His anger was loud, but beneath it lived fear, shame, and a crushing sense of failure. He hated himself for what he was becoming, and that hatred spilled outward, staining everything it touched. She saw it in the way he avoided mirrors, in the way he flinched at sudden sounds, in the way his hands sometimes shook for no visible reason. She told herself that understanding was enough, that compassion would be stronger than the darkness growing inside him. But understanding does not protect a heart forever. There were nights she cried quietly in the bathroom so he would not hear her. Mornings she woke with dread instead of hope. A house that once felt warm began to feel like a place where she tiptoed through emotional minefields. Still she stayed, not because she was weak, but because she believed love could be stronger than pain, because she remembered the man he had been and trusted that somewhere inside the beast he still existed. The world rarely applauds women like her. Instead, it questions them. Why do you stay? Why don't you leave? Why do you keep trying? No one asks what it costs to leave someone you love when they are drowning, or how heavy guilt feels when you imagine abandoning a person at their lowest. She carried that guilt like a second spine, straightening her resolve even as it bent her spirit. She told herself that love was not about convenience, that commitment meant staying when it hurt the most. Change, when it finally began, did not arrive in a dramatic moment of realization. It arrived slowly, through exhaustion, through the nights he sat alone, staring at nothing, and the mornings he saw the tiredness in her eyes and could not look away. Something in him began to crack, not outward in anger, But inward in regret, he started noticing the silence she carried, the way her smile no longer reached her eyes. He started feeling the weight of what he was becoming. The beast reflected back at him through her quiet suffering. The first real shift came when he admitted, if only to himself, that love alone could not heal him, that her patience was not an endless resource, that the woman standing beside him was not indestructible. Seeking help was not easy for him. It felt like surrender, like admitting weakness in a world that had taught him survival through strength. But slowly, painfully, he began to confront his demons instead of feeding them. Healing was not linear. There were setbacks, days when anger returned with a vengeance, moments when she wondered if anything had truly changed. But there were also small victories, fragile and precious, apologies that felt sincere, silences that felt safe instead of threatening, a hand reaching for hers without fear. She learned that loving him through healing required a different kind of strength, one that included boundaries and self-respect, not just sacrifice. As he worked to reclaim himself, she faced her own transformation. She realized how much of herself she had buried to keep him afloat. Dreams postponed, friendships neglected, joy rationed. Loving the beast had taught her resilience, but it had also taught her how easy it was to disappear inside someone else's pain. Slowly, she began to reclaim her voice, her needs, her sense of worth. She learned that loving someone did not mean losing herself, and that true compassion included compassion for one's own heart. The man he was becoming was not the same as the man he had been before, but he was no longer just the beast either. He was scarred, humbled, and painfully aware of his capacity for harm. He learned to sit with his emotions instead of unleashing them, to communicate instead of withdrawing. He learned that love was not proven through endurance alone, but through change, accountability, and respect. The relationship did not return to the simplicity it once had, but it gained something deeper, a raw honesty, a shared understanding of how fragile people can be, and how powerful healing becomes when it is chosen rather than forced. She loved him not because he was perfect, but because he was trying, because he was learning to become someone safer, kinder, more present. There were still days when fear whispered to her, reminding her of the past. There were still moments when his shadows surfaced unexpectedly, but there was also laughter again, cautious but real. There were shared silences that felt peaceful rather than heavy. There was hope, no longer blind, but earned through effort and change. Before this story ends, please take a moment to comment below. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or even just a single word that reflects how this story made you feel. Your comments matter more than you know. In the end, she understood something that took her years to learn. Loving someone through their darkest transformation does not guarantee a fairy tale ending. It guarantees growth, pain, and the chance to discover who you truly are. She loved the beast he became not because it was easy, but because through that love she discovered her own strength, her limits, and her worth. And he learned that love is not something you survive at someone else's expense, but something you protect through responsibility and change. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love or a version of yourself you once were, please like, comment, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them. Sometimes, the most powerful stories are not about perfect people, but about broken ones who choose to heal.